Going to declare the meeting of the Growth and Infrastructure Committee open. First item is apologies. We have apologies, I understand, from Councillor Young, Councillor Southgate, and for lateness from Councillor Pascoe. There is no others? Okay, we'll note that and put that in if necessary. Depends how long your questioning is, Gary. Thank you. Okay, I'll move, and do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Taylor, that the apologies be accepted. Those in favour, against, carried. Confirmation of the agenda, councillors. We're going to be jumping around a little bit today because we have, and you'll see on your run sheet, about 2/3 of the way down the front page, we've invited, at the bottom of the front page, we've invited different speakers to different items at set times. So we're going to try and get those items listed there as close to those set times as possible, so we don't keep our invited speakers going on too long. So subject to what's on the run sheet here, I'll move that the agenda be confirmed, seconded by James. Those in favour, against, carried. Now, on to declarations of interest. I understand the Deputy Mayor has one he'd like to make.
I declare an interest in that with regard to agenda item number 16. I happen to be resident in a nearby street.
Okay. So that's item 16, land,
So I just asked that.
road stopping.
I just request that be noted.
Yeah. Okay, that's noted. So with that done, we're moving on to the public forum. Now, councillors, and public, we've got 5 people speaking on one subject. The Hillsborough Terrace road stopping issue. That's all going to be left to the end of this part. We've got 3 speaking before that on other items, and we're going to start with that shortly. But there is only 3 minutes each, and because we've got 8 speaking, we're going to take up, I know, all the half hour doing that. So if any latecomers, you're out of luck. Sorry, I presume that everyone else has seen Amy over there. Thanks. So we're going to start with Phil Evans. Phil's talking about on the update on the SPCA Memorandum of Understanding, which is in the General Manager's report. Thanks, Phil. You know how the process works, so fire away, and if you get within the 3 minutes, time for questions.
I won't get within the 3 minutes. Thanks for the opportunity.
Item 18, sorry, Phil. Item 18 it's not in the General Manager's report. Sorry, my fault. Off you go now.
As everyone probably aware, I still have issues with cats on my property, but I have read through the report from Susan Stanford from Animal Control, and I think it's a really half-hearted attempt at trying to dissuade council from doing anything about the management of cats in Hamilton. Shortly, just after I spoke, presented back in February, the Waikato Times ran a poll, an online poll, relating to this issue, to which 18,500 people have responded. 85% of those want the council to be proactive in doing something about this. Only 15% said do nothing. And that's full containment of cats, desexing and microchipping as mandatory. So that's 85%. That's quite significant. A couple of things I want to point out about the report from Susan that I think are just quite extraordinary. Councillor Bunting is going to carry on during the item later on to ask some questions. Because of the report, I don't believe is very, very good. A couple of things. There's no data regarding the handling of cats at the Animal Control for the last 6 months. It seems to end at March the 8th, which I thought the whole point of the report was to let the council know what was happening in 6 months' time. But it seems that the report was written back in early March and nothing else has been done. Only 2% of the 50 cats that, 4% of the 50 cats that have been handled by the Animal Control have been returned to owners. So that means mandatory microchipping would resolve that problem, so people know where their cats are. Another issue, there's a charge in there, or an item there, for 80 hours of casual labour to handle cats for $14,000. That's $175 an hour to handle cats. Is that a joke? There's something not right there. Another one is for a cost in the future of a vehicle suitably adapted to handle cats at approximately $50,000. I think most people would be aware that to handle a cat, you put it in a cat crate for $100, put it on the back seat of your car and take it where you want to go. How do you adapt a vehicle to handle cats? Fair enough for dogs when you've got Great Danes and Chihuahuas, there's a bit of an issue. All cats will fit into a crate. So that's another thing that I'm not quite sure, but that's only part of it. So I'm asking council, please be proactive. 85% of 18,000 people want you guys to do something. Put in place any bylaw amendments that need doing so that when central government change their Animal Welfare Acts, that you guys can actually enforce something to keep cats out of other people's properties and force owners to keep them on their own sections. Thank you.
Thanks, Phil. We don't have time for any questions. By the way, to all speakers, 3 minutes total and 2.5 minutes the bell goes, and Phil used up his 30 seconds there as well. Thank you, Phil.
Thank you.
For that. And that item is, as I said, number 18 will come up later. Next, we have speaking on the Valley Terrace issue. is item 15 is Christina Campbell. And Christina, you're also familiar with how we work things here. So the time's yours now, thanks.
Okay. Good morning, Your Worship, Mayor Andrew King, councillors and other interested parties. I appreciate the opportunity to speak before Council today before a vote is taken in relation to the approval of remedial works concerning Valley Terrace drainage issues affecting my property. I have 3 points I would like to speak on. Firstly, although the report states 12 Valley Terrace is the sole benefactor of the pipe broken on my neighbour's property, I maintain that, as it is part of a drainage network affecting properties both downstream and in particular upstream, multiple properties are benefiting from the remedial work. Secondly, the costed option is significantly higher than the one I have been advocating for. However, I am grateful for any resolution of what has for me become a protracted and distressing affair at significant personal cost to me in time, finance and energy to protect my property from erosion. Thirdly, I would appreciate urgency of resolution, as the time that has elapsed since the Council was first notified of a drain blockage on my neighbour's property has been over 2 years now, during which time I have lost a significant proportion of my property to erosion, both physically and economically. Council have historically maintained the pipeline, and I am pleased to see that the staff have recommended formal ownership and maintenance for the future. Thank you.
Thanks. We've got time for a question if there is any. If not, I think we're quite familiar with that. And thanks very much, Christina.
Okay,
item 15 and 18 will definitely be being discussed in the afternoon. If anyone wants to come back for the items they're speaking to, I'll try and give you an indication of when. So it'll be the afternoon after 1:30 sometime. Thanks. Now, next we have Andrea Graves from the Riverlea Environment Society speaking on item 12, the Te Awa Cycleway project. Andrea, time's yours, thanks.
Thank you. I was told this was 2 to 5 minutes, so I will contract it as much as I can. So I'm part of the Riverlea Environment Society. We're stakeholders in the area. We've done a huge amount of work. We've planted 6,000 native trees and shrubs in Hammond Park, removed a lot of weeds. We do predator control in the park, and we've also become a Kiwibank predator-free community, so we're doing predator control on private land that wraps around the park. Who's walked through Hammond Park along the boardwalk? Division. Well, it's for those of you that haven't, it's probably Hamilton's most precious ecological gem. It's only a hectare. I'm talking about the important bush part of Hammond Park. It's a little sliver of bush alongside the river. There's a boardwalk that zigzags very sharply, and it does so in order to avoid the very significant trees. It holds Hamilton's last stand of swamp myri, a tree that used to be very common. These are stunning trees. They are absolutely festooned with perching plants and vines, and they are each one's like a little city supporting its own community of insects and plants and birds. It's also a very important historical area. There's a couple of past sites there, and Ngāti Wairere ancestors lived there. They gardened, they hunted, they gathered, and there's some wonderful stories to be told about that, and that's something our society is looking forward to doing more of. We've been really concerned about the prospect of a cycleway going through there, particularly if the boardwalk needed to be widened, which was the initial proposal. What's happening now, we understand, is that the proposal is for a narrow boardwalk, the boardwalk to stay utterly as narrow as it is at the moment, with no change, and for it to be a dismount-only section for cyclists. That's great recognition of the ecological value of the area, which is also written into the District Plan and the Reserves Management Act. But we have a couple of concerns. Will people dismount as they're asked to, and what will happen if they don't and there's a crash? Will there be emergency widening works for safety? And just because this is Hamilton's most biodiverse, ecologically precious fragment of bush, we really don't want, in this case, safety trumping conservation in the future. I think I'll stop in case there's questions.
Okay, we open it to questions, and I might say this item is expected to be about 1:45 that we're actually hearing. If you did want to come back, Andrea. Questions, Councillor Bunt?
Thank you. There are gates at either end, aren't they, so they'd have to dismount. Then they probably couldn't.
Sorry, Mark, can you speak into the speaker when you, when you're all councillors when you're asking questions?
Yeah, I'm a bit novice with microphones. Sorry. There are gates. There are gates. Is that right? Gates to
there are gates,
right,
yeah.
and the zigzag. So it would be quite tough to cycle through there. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. And for most people, and you can cycle through there at the moment, but you need to do it quite slowly because it's obvious it's unsafe. So we just really worry about mountain bikers, and it's really the few people that go crazy.
Right. And is there any solution that Te Awa could come up with that you'd be able to work with that they've come up with so far, or would you just prefer they avoided the area?
Ideally, they'd prefer the area, but we can see why they want to go through there. And in future, they could avoid it by having a fantastic wide path in the Peacocks area. Yeah. Okay. So that would be the solution, but in the interim, perhaps a dismount section would work. We're still working on that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, you do have a buzz, something electronic.
Oh, sorry.
It's better than a hand waving. One quick one. Yeah. Question, not speech.
No. Is there any sort of further design work? And I have been through there, and I've walked, but with the gates and stuff, that could literally make it physically and practically force any cyclist to stay dismounted through that area? Well,
it also needs to be suitable for people on mobility scooters and for buggies to be pushed along, so we're a little bit constrained by that. And Te Awa have come up with a couple of options, and I think that we all know that they're not brilliant at the moment, but there might be some clever thinking that can be done.
And without putting words...
Sorry, Martin, that's all we've got time for. We've got a very busy day, and we will be discussing that particular aspect later. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Andrea.
Thanks, everyone.
Councillors, just before we start the next 5, which are all on the Hillsborough Terrace road stopping proposal, I just want to make it clear what we're talking about here. We're not talking, and I don't want to have any submissions about the actual proposed development that may or may not come further down the track. The reason that's important is because this is part of a judicial process, and if we start hearing stuff now that may affect our decisions later on, we could be being accused of having predetermined resolutions. The only reason this is on the agenda is because we have a legal process that we have to start, which is a request to stop part of the road and then to sell it, and we have to determine whether we... So what I'm only willing to hear on is whether we should or shouldn't be doing that, and if so, what process we should be following in terms of the public hearings, public involvement, not about the actual development itself. And that's important for both the submitters and the councillors in their questions. There will be an opportunity later on if we did decide on a road stopping process and with the public involvement, and we decided to proceed with that, there would be an opportunity to discuss the actual development in front of a full hearing. Whether it's a commission or a council is yet to be decided, but we're not dealing with and haven't received an application for the actual development yet. That will be a resource consent matter later on. So if any speakers start speaking about development itself, I'm going to have to stop you on that front. Please talk about the road stopping. You say what you like about that and about the process that we should be following to hear it if we go down that track. So with that proviso, I've got Sarah and Luke Mercer first. Thanks. I understand that's been explained to the people that pre-booked in too, by the way. I'm not sure about those who haven't pre-booked in. So the time's yours, Sarah and Luke, whichever way you want to do it. Thanks.
Good morning, councillors. My name is Luke Mercer. I'm a homeowner and a resident at the property immediately adjacent to the land currently owned by the Martin Trust, I'm Martin Trust, and I'm strongly opposed to the council's proposed road stopping and the sale of land to the trust. I accept what you're saying. My concern, and I'll try not to address what you're talking about, but my concern predominantly is that when I bought my property 3 years ago, I was aware that there was an empty, undeveloped lot adjacent, and I was reassured by the size and the topography and the shape of it that it was very unlikely that anything could be excessively developed on that. My reassurance, therefore, was that the beautiful views that I enjoy would remain intact and therefore remain a significant added value to my property. If the trust that owned the undeveloped land next door wanted to expand their land, they could have bought my property before me. They've owned that land for years and years. And in fact, my own property and the other 2 adjacent properties have all been for sale in the 5 years previous to now. And they could have easily expanded their land.
I think you're straying into that other area there a bit, Luke.
Instead, I feel that they've sat on a piece of land that they've bought at a bargain price, and because of its size, they've bought it at a bargain price because of its size, shape and topography.
I think you need to talk about the...
And they now seek...
Sorry, hang on a minute,
Yep.
Luke. My comments aren't going to be part of your 3 minutes, don't worry about that. I just think you need to talk about the addition of the extra bit, which you did start talking about.
So they seek to unjustly boost their own land value by buying an adjacent section of land that has never been offered for sale, at the expense of my own property's value, potentially. That's my concern, in particular, accordance to the sale of land. The land that they currently own could be developed without the addition of this piece of land that they are proposing to buy, and that would be unlikely to be excessive development. That would not require any sale of land by the council. Yeah, I guess that's my summary, is that I believe that the sale of the council land in this case, this is land that should be available to be used by all parties, is only going to benefit one party at the expense of other neighbourhood parties.
Right. Thanks. Sarah, did you have any?
Just that, as we go forward with this, we feel that we do have a real interest in this and that we need to be talked to, that we need to be approached and be a part of this decision because it really does affect us.
Thanks very much. And look, thanks for trying to restrict yourself there. It's not easy, I understand. Councillors, additional to the report later, I've asked staff to prepare us a set of bullet points which will come around there, not for discussion now, but in later, and we make that available to the public as well, about the type, what's involved in the consultation process, which goes to Sarah's last point there about keeping the public opportunity to be involved open. So we'll discuss that when we come there, because I think that's an important aspect of this as well. So you might like to get a copy from staff after this part finishes of that.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Mr Chair, just which property is Luke and Sarah's?
We're number 7.
Number 7.
So we're the one with the pool that you can see.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That might be quite a good idea, that everyone coming up identifies which property they have if they're one of the people in the area. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Okay, we've got Brad Chibnall next. Oh, there you are, Brad. Hi. I think you're probably familiar with this process.
Enough, close enough. Except to say you've taken away about half my argument, so I'll try and sort of stick to what you've asked for. I'm a near neighbour, just laying it out. First of all, my first point is that the proposed land that was recommended for sale is not zoned for residential development, so I would argue that any proposed development is non-complying by your own rules. I would also ask, why is this land being recommended for sale to one particular party? Why is it not a publicly contestable, done in a publicly contestable forum? Perhaps there's a group of neighbours that want to start a crowdfunding type of arrangement. So I think that's premature. Thirdly, why would you sell the land to a developer when there is actually no firm proposal on the table, when you don't actually know what he's going to do? I think that's a fairly sort of fair question. I think, Andrew, you opposed development on green space during your campaign. I think down by Ferrybank there was a proposal for some development of apartments down there. So I hope that you're sort of consistent with your decisions on this sort of thing. And whilst on your minutes it's all described as a road, in a practical sense, it's actually a green space is what we view now. I would just request at a very minimum that councillors just go and eyeball the space, have a look at it firsthand before you make any decisions to sell a piece of land when we don't even know what's actually proposed for the land. I think this is way too premature. That's my lot.
Thanks, Brad. Just one point on your early point about why not an open process. Any person at all is able, under the law, to come to the council and request that they purchase a piece of reserve, and we have no choice legally but to start the process at that point. I know it's to the layperson it appears like you've described, but we as a council have no choice but to entertain that, if you like.
Absolutely. But the recommendation is for you to actually sell it to this person, and I'm saying don't go down that track. If you decide first of all you are going to sell it, then I would argue make it publicly contestable, in which case Mr Martin could have a fair crack of it along with anyone else. If you even get to that point. I hope you don't.
Thanks very much.
Okay.
Sorry. Andrew, just please, councillors, just press the button. Yeah, but you can.
Person live?
Sorry?
Where do you live?
I live in Anglesey Street, not too far from there, but certainly not an immediate neighbour. Neighbour probably sort of 10 houses away type of thing.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks very much.
All right.
Okay, thank you, Brad. Next, we've got, I'm trying to read your writing here, Amy. Is it Jim Wheeler? Is that Jim? Yes. Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Jim. You've seen how it works, so time's yours. Thanks.
Good morning, and thank you for this opportunity. First of all, if I could make it clear, I'm here in my capacity as a private ratepayer. I live at 9 Anglesey Street, which is immediately adjacent to the proposed development or the proposed sale of land. I bought my land, my house, where I live with my family 2.5 years ago. I understand that the Martin Trust owned their land prior to that. I mention that because, as previously stated, Mr Martin has had ample opportunity of buying other land if he thought that the land he currently has was not a viable option to build on. I also see in the submission that he previously did have or has had plans to build an apartment block on the land as it is, and I don't see it as immediately obvious why he needs the extra land other than to build a bigger building. I agree with the previous comments made by the last speaker in that I see Mr Martin asking for an unfair option as to have sole or presumably sole option on buying this land. I think it is a dangerous precedent and I would not like to see it go ahead. I've only been in Hamilton 3 years, and I have to say I very much enjoy being here. And one of the reasons I like Hamilton are the large open spaces we have here, with a multitude of parks, open spaces, trees. And that's not just the parks itself, it is also the road reserve and the areas around our roads. I think it's a beautiful city. I would hate to see this as the thin end of the wedge and the sale of property, even dribs and drabs, little bits being allowed. I am really opposed to this sale. I welcome any questions.
Yeah, thanks. Any questions, councillors? Not. Thanks very much, Jim. Appreciate you coming in.
Thank you.
Next, we have Linda Fraser. Thanks. Thanks, Linda.
Marina Council. I live at Hillsborough Terrace, 31 Hillsborough Terrace. There's that new development that's down there that's just about complete. It's number 31 to 35 Anglesey Street, but it is actually up to 2 Anglesey Street. My husband and I both believe that the council land is for enjoyment and use of ratepayers, not for the benefit of developers. If council provides the developers with access to this land, then they will have access to Hillsborough Terrace, and that will be strongly voted against by our immediate neighbours in Hillsborough Terrace. Hillsborough Terrace does not need 30 plus extra vehicles travelling both ways.
I think you're starting to stray into that area about the development itself. You talk about the land, yeah.
Okay. Well, then I make note that with the development next to us, there was the opportunity for an entrance to go to Anglesey Street, but Hillsborough Terrace was the entrance that needed to be used. And there are 18 vehicles with the residents that use the entrance onto Hillsborough Terrace. We feel that Council is hell-bent on crushing development into the existing city to meet the 50% target with using existing infrastructure without regard for existing city properties. And I think you've actually heard property owners. So I think you've actually heard what previous people have said too. And the design that shows on the...
No, not in...
All right.
Can't go down there. Sorry.
Okay. Well, we are very disappointed with the arrangements with the council. We just wonder if other people get the opportunity to buy council land, would a bit of Rugby Park be sold to developers if someone requested it? So that's, you know, we would really appreciate hearing more in the future about what is going to happen.
Yeah, thanks. And I'll repeat, but make sure you get a copy of this process points about how that's going to work.
Thanks very much.
Afterwards, I've got a question from Councillor Mallett. Thanks.
Thank you for your presentation. Previous submitters have expressed concern that the current developer seems to have some sole rights to purchase this land, and I'm not aware of any option, but that's the way it was enunciated previously. Would you be more comfortable if anyone could, like yourselves, could purchase the? Brad suggested the community, the residents might want to band together and buy it, or anyone else might want to get together. We
would like discussion, have that opportunity, have that discussion. Plus, I mean, we've used that area as a walking area and a park area as it stands.
Yep.
So
would you think it would be fair that you guys could gazump the developer and buy the thing at a slightly higher price, or some arrangement like that, and then you would retain it as it is?
Yes, I think our neighbourhood would be interested in meeting and discussing it.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Linda. Appreciate your time. And the last one in the public forum is John Earl. Thanks.
I've got nothing to add.
That's the sort of submission that's good for our meeting time. Thanks, John. Look, councillors and public, that item is, I would say, going to come up mid-afternoon, not before 2 o'clock at a guess. So you're most welcome to stay, but we can't go on to discuss it now because we've got a lot of other things that are timed. So just to give you a bit of a warning, you may want to check in with Amy or someone at lunchtime, which will be sort of around 1 o'clock, about how it's going time-wise, if you did want to come back for that discussion. So thank you very much for speaking, all the people in the submission, and for trying very well to keep to the... There's one other... We have received a letter from another resident in the area, Anne Bell, which is being distributed to all councillors, and I didn't want this read out because there's a number of points in here that don't relate to the item on the agenda, that relate to the development itself, but it is distributed for your information, councillors. I said I'd draw that to your attention. Thanks. So we're moving on to item 5, which is the minutes of the Growth and Infrastructure Committee meeting of the 1st of August. Thanks, everyone. That's on page 6. So, are there any questions or comments? Gary?
Just on page 8 of the agenda, talking about the boy races, and it discusses some of the commentary. One of the things I think that was really pertinent was that we did all agree that what they were doing was illegal. That is not noted in the minutes.
Yeah, I guess they thought the inference was by involving the police that was there, but it doesn't hurt to. It was certainly said at the meeting.
Well, I just think that was a material comment that needs to be. You know, they're not doing something within the law. They're doing something without the law.
It was an opinion expressed, which I think that this
but it's a fact, though, isn't it?
Hang on, Gary. I'll just let me finish. I think it's legitimate to have opinion. That whole section was an opinion, really, because we weren't ruling on matters of law or anything like that. People were expressing their opinion, and that was a strongly expressed one at the time. I do recall. So I think it's fair if we just add that in an appropriate.
Just that it was noted that the activities were illegal or something like that.
That some of the, I don't think there was, I think there was agreement that some of the activities were illegal, not all of it. People congregating in cars parked on the side of the road isn't in itself illegal. So I think there was a distinction drawn at the meeting, Gary.
But we need to be real about what these kids are doing.
Yeah. I do happen to have seen the police quickly getting people out of that area and across on the other side of the river too, where the next place they go from there. So they've been quite proactive in that area in recent month or so. So we're going to add that bit, Amy, just somewhere appropriate into that paragraph about that being the illegality of some of the actions being expressed at the meeting. Are there any other queries on this? If not, I'll move and seconded by, Angela, sorry.
You know I always use the technology.
Yeah, you're good.
Thanks, Chair. Just a question to the CE again on page 13, the local alcohol policy. I asked at the last meeting, had we written the letter and you were going to follow up to the Minister of Health?
Were you waiting for a new Minister of Health, were you?
No, my understanding is, I need to check with the Mayor, it was the last we checked in was that it was sitting in the Mayor's office, but that was directly after that. It may have gone by now.
Yep. Justice and one to the Minister of Coleman, I think.
Yes.
So.
Okay, so that's 2 meeting cycles to send a letter. Okay, so can you let me know when the letter has gone, and can I see a copy?
Andrew said it has gone, Angela.
Oh, it has gone.
Yeah, no. So the letter was sitting with the. So the background was, now it's coming back to me. The letter was sitting with the Mayor. We did some research and found out that the policy wasn't necessarily owned by who we initially identified. That's why the letter's been sent to 2 ministers now.
Okay, so I did query that on the Minister of Health's website, and it was owned by them. That's why I put the motion, but we'll agree to disagree here. But I guess it doesn't go to anybody until after the election now. But at least it's been sent. So thank you.
I think the point's accepted that it's been sent. I think it might help, and if it's been a request by the meeting, that when that happens, we circulate it once it's done.
Yeah, because it was a formal motion. Thank you. Thank you.
But it's well and truly been sent by Andrew.
Weeks ago, I don't know what that means, but...
Andrew might, since it's his office and you two guys were confused about what was happening,
from the query, when we inquired, it was exactly as Richard said, and it's now since been sent. So
yeah, I know. Andrew's trying to say something here about when it's been sent.
Yeah, my recollection is I signed it last week or the week before, but if it was last week, it was the very beginning of last week, and it was sent on immediately, and it was couriered, I think, and it was sent to both because it is a matter around timing of the court system, and the Minister of Justice is an important part of that process.
Yep. Yep. Oh, it's gone to the original request plus one other anyway, so I don't think the motion's been flouted or anything. Thanks, Andrew. So are there any other questions or on the minutes? If not, I'll move, and seconded by James, just got in a nose in front of Jeff. Those in favour, against, carried. Now we're on to the Chair's report, which starts on page 16, the actual report. And I have asked staff if they wish to make some comments on a couple of things here, and I'll take questions, but the orange road cone disease, I'd asked the GM of, is he here? Oh, no, Jason, sorry. Did he pass on to you that I said you might like to say something?
Yes, yeah, I'm more than happy to talk to that.
Yeah, if you would, Jason. I'll just go through the points here. Yeah.
So last week Councillor McPherson spoke to me about orange road cones and the proliferation of them on unattended sites. So we're aware of that, and as we come into spring and summer, we expect there to be a lot more roadworks on the network, and as a result, we're taking the opportunity now to send out a notice to the database of contractors we have, just to make them well aware of that when they have temporary traffic management on site, that it needs to be fit for purpose, that if it's there, it needs to highlight a hazard, as opposed to them not putting it away because it's too difficult to do so. And the reason for that is because the travelling public may get a bit blasé about what the traffic, or temporary traffic management cones, signs are actually telling them. So we're also included it in our corridor access request systems now. So there's a clause in there telling them, just re-emphasising that point. We've got a presentation to the contracting industry coming up, so we'll be taking the opportunity to raise it there. And we've just asked staff if they see any signs of unnecessary temporary traffic management on the roads, that they inform our Infrastructure Alliance, just so we try and keep a better handle on this. Just to give you an example, last month we had the highest number of corridor access requests, which was around 200. Usually we get around 150, and we just expect that to keep growing as we get into spring and summer. So we just need to be as vigilant as we can in this area. So
I think, Jason, it's also been noted that a lot of utilities contractors are the ones that are maybe the hardest to control in this area, because while they get approval from us for the works, we don't deal with the conditions of that go with those digging up for fibre or whatever it is.
Yep.
So is there any way we can influence that?
In terms of meeting with the industry, we do include our utility operators as part of that, and it's very much is around, I suppose, building those relationships and ensuring that message is just at the forefront of their work as part of their working practices.
Thanks. Martin, if you'd like to speak, please press your buzzer and join the queue. I've got Gary first, then James.
Thank you, Dave. My issue, or my question is regarding CBD seating.
Oh, sorry. I just wanted the orange cones first.
Okay, sorry.
We'll put you back in the... Sorry, I should have explained that. Just orange cones. James?
Just a quick statement, really. Look, we don't know how lucky we are with the orange cones we have in New Zealand. When you look at it, if you've been overseas to places like India where they do road maintenance and everything else and contracting work, they don't have that sort of thing. And it's pretty dangerous. They use people as like human speed bumps. So, you know, I think the orange cones is no problem with them.
Yeah, I think the problem I perceive is, and I've had lots of comments from the public and from councillors, is that it's when they're not necessary, for instance, being left out over a weekend, people do get blasé, they think, and they don't go at the lower speed limit or carefully because they see them so often with no one working there, and it becomes unsafe to have them. They should only be there when people are working there, so that they don't become human speed bumps. And that's the issue that we perceive. Not that you shouldn't have them, you should only have them when they're needed. And if it's 200 times in a month, that's when they're needed, but not the extra evenings and weekends and so forth has been the issue that's been raised. Sorry, I've got Mark on this one.
Yeah, no, mine was about another.
Okay, we'll add everyone back. Martin on this one.
Yeah. Well, in Japan they have these mannequins at night, which are really good, and you're not sure if it's a real person or a mannequin, so you're very cautious. I think, is there any ground, for, whether it's multimedia, City News, our own website, social media, perhaps first of all to remind people that they should take the cones seriously, but whether there's a hotline if people are querying, cones being left out unnecessarily. So I think, in fairness to our staff, they can only tell the contractors they can't be everywhere, every place, but there may be an Alliance hotline if people have a query about a roadwork in a certain area, they could ring.
Well, yeah, that's good. Jason, could you have a look at that with the comms people, just the use of our comms unit to remind people about both the safety and unnecessary aspects of this?